We are on.
Okay. All right, everybody. Thanks for having me here today. I will introduce myself a little bit more in just a moment because I want to put it in the context of what we're talking about today. And it's interesting. I was saying to Yolanda before we started, I wonder if people are getting tired of these topics around dealing with our circumstances, but I don't think we are. I think we can't wait for it to be over and for, in some sense, to go back to this normalcy that we had before, to want to do things the way we did in the past, to live the way we live, to run our personal and professional lives and our careers the way we've done in the past. But that's pretty much a pipe dream now, as we know. So what we'll be talking about today is around future planning. It isn't getting back to where we were. It's about adapting to where we are and preparing for what can come. We know disruptions are going to happen, and you can't control that. But you can, however, be more ready for them by being purposeful and putting yourself in a position to succeed regardless of what might happen. And the future planning we'll talk about today will allow you to have a greater sense of control over your preparedness to deal with whatever comes. It's a matter of being able to influence your own circumstances, and there's absolutely no guarantees. So whether it's what we talk about today or next week when you're talking about finances or marketing strategies, but hopefully this can help you move from, if you look at the screen here where I have chance to change. And again, it's about taking control over your own circumstance. So 2020 has been a heck of a year. I don't think that's a surprise or a different way of saying things. And I remember, it's funny that you mentioned, Elizabeth, about Saturday Night Live. I was thinking the other day about when I was driving to work back in early March. I was driving into Chagrin Falls, and they were talking about this COVID. They weren't referring to it as a pandemic at the time, but they were talking about this disease that could come to the US, maybe, and what might the impact will be. And I just had this weird flash of realization that it was like this momentary flash that somehow this was going to be one of these generational events that's going to impact us in unforeseen ways. And I had no idea what that would be. But regardless of who we are and what we do, we've all been hit with this. And this has turned our worlds topsy-turvy, both our professional world and our home lives and our personal lives. And some people have been able to find their sea legs, and others are still trying to figure things out and get some equilibrium. We all prepare for predictable types of challenges, whether it's economic downturns, health issues, cyclical market trends. But everybody was pretty much blindsided by this pandemic and the sweeping economic crisis that resulted because of it. It disrupted our professional lives, it disrupted our personal lives and our home lives too. And as a result, it's kind of become a culture of haves and have-nots. Some enterprises have been just completely walloped. They've had to furlough or lay off staffs. Some people on this call might have been part of that. Some businesses went out of business altogether, and others have managed to either hang on by a thread or either find a new purpose and a new path forward. And some have even really thrived in this environment. I mean, would you have thought 6 months ago that investing in things like Clorox wipes or toilet paper, bicycles, home crafting kits would be moneymakers that they are now, or that restaurants would be closing down on a daily basis? The thing is that change is really happening at an exponential level these days. Like, for example, a year or two ago, Black Friday was one of those American events. It was just part of who we are as a great American pastime. But I remember last year driving past the mall on Black Friday, and there were plenty of parking spaces that morning. I wasn't out at 5 a.m., but even at 10 a.m., the parking lots were not full. There was not a ton of traffic. And I was listening to something the other day where they were talking about as Black Friday in itself a thing of the past. Who'd have thought that? So some people call the topic we're going to talk about today as future proofing. But as I said, there's no guarantee but you can, however, put yourself in a best position possible to make yourselves more strong and more sustainable. So before we dive in, I just want to give you a little bit of background about myself so you know who I am and to give context to what we're going to talk about today. I've had some unusual and very uncharacteristic, for me anyway, events in the past couple years where the stars were aligning in strange ways that took me in different directions and along a very purposeful path. So this background is partially about me as a person and as a professional, because what we're going to talk about today is that these are absolutely intertwined. I spent 27 years of my career at Lubrizol. I was in human resources, doing things around HR, talent development, talent acquisition, training, learning. And I had a very conservative approach to my career. I was with a very stable employer where I felt safe. And as long as I did a good job, I performed ethically, I was good as gold. I could easily have ridden out the rest of my career there, retired there, and done very well. But I turned 55, and all of a sudden, I had this new perspective. I started examining what I was doing with my life, and I saw my job was moving away from what I really enjoyed and what I was good at, which was developing people, helping teams, helping people work together effectively, helping people perform well, and coaching and things like that. And I was moving more towards, my role was moving more towards having me do things like process documentation, which is fine for some. Some people really enjoy that, but to me, it was not something I really enjoyed at all. And I started dreading getting up and going to my job every day. And I could see the dots ahead of me, the future laying out in front of me, working on documentation and technical processes helped me felt very drained and trapped by my circumstances. I had always secretly wanted to be an independent contractor, consultant and coach, and I knew I'd enjoy it and I'd be good at it. But there was nothing really forcing my hand to change. But as I said, the stars aligned a little bit. My boss was leaving the company. We had a new HR vice president coming in, and they were going to realign again. And so I knew there was going to be another restructuring, and my job was going to become even more so in that data process kind of area that I could do, but really just didn't enjoy it all. And I just didn't have the heart to face it. So I put my big girl pants on and I decided to make some purposeful decisions about my career and my future. So I was able, from a financial standpoint, to move my pension to another place, because the way our pension was set up was if something happened to me, my family wouldn't be able to get any of that. And I was able to work out a buyout. So I had a little bit of a cushion to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. I connected with a learning organization that we had used as a vendor, and I worked with them for about a year and really enjoyed that, and started to see some dots connecting again when one of our biggest clients, which was a global Fortune top 30 customer, was having some safety and PR issues. I don't want to say who they are, but you might be able to figure out who that is. They were grounded for the foreseeable future. And so this company was thinking, well, let's just keep going. Everything will be fine. But I thought, you know, there's really no stability in this future. I better start thinking about something else. So I figured I'd try that independent approach again. But while I was looking to restart my business, I got offered a full-time position with a consulting company. I wasn't sure about being an employee again, but I would be able to do work I enjoy. Then COVID hit. And as you can imagine, the stars were aligning again. There was no new work coming in. And so I was able to work out a deal with them where I could continue to work with them, but then also go off and do my own thing. So what does all of this have to do with future planning or future proofing? It's about being purposeful. It's about being, I should have been clicking as I go through. I get kind of caught up there. It's about being purposeful. It's about knowing who you are, what you want, and being able to see what's going on around you so that you can make decisions that are going to help you as an individual and help you as your business be effective in your own context of what that is. Your own context is really essential. And as I go through this presentation, I want you to think of it in a couple different layers. your personal context, which applies to you as a person, your individual career and what you want, and also your professional context, whether you have a business, you're part of an enterprise, whether you're someone who owns your own business, who operates in a small business, or somebody who's part of a large organization, as I used to be. Both of these elements are intertwined. And when you think about future proofing and future planning, you need to keep both of those pieces together. To succeed in turbulent times, you need to find some anchors that can give you a sense of stability. And I like to refer to them as your core three, the things that you can count on that you know to be true. The first one is your strengths and your capabilities. This is absolutely critical. And it's not just what you do today. It's not just the work you're doing today or the job that you have today. You know, maybe I'm the logistics manager for Acme Enterprises or something, but it's about the capability and the potential you have. It's your contribution, it's your impact. Think more broadly instead like your organizational skills, your ability to manage a balance sheet, analyze data and problem solve, your ability to lead a work team and to inspire and motivate other people. Even things you aren't currently using today. Maybe you have great writing skills, but you've never had the opportunity to use them in the work you do. If it's your business, maybe you work for a company that makes fasteners. And so instead of thinking in those terms, if you have a business, thinking in terms of, we make high quality steel or polymer products that can be used to connect things. So many companies are shifting their product lines today to match the needs of today. For example, how many fashion companies have you seen that are making masks, or the Gap or Old Navy or things like that, where people are shifting what they do because they understand what their strengths are and they're aligning that to what the market is saying. The second piece you want to think about is your own mission and values. Again, your own personal mission as an individual and your mission of your organization. This is what's important to you, why you do what you do. It could be that you want a job where you help people, where you work with children, where you get to but you get to work with numbers to make them tell a story, that you lead others, or your values could be that you're very independent and you get to manage your own day. Regardless of your circumstances, you're going to be more successful when you do something that you believe in and something that aligns with your values and your own personal mission or the mission of your business. And it doesn't have to be locked into the work you're doing today, but it's having that as a core indicator of the direction or the path you want to take. The third piece that's an important anchor is your financial situation. And it's interesting, I was smiling when I heard the topic in the next couple of weeks about understanding finances, because, wouldn't it be nice if you could just make decisions based on strengths and your mission and values? But you also have to understand your financial situation, your risk tolerance, personally or within your business. How long can you go without a steady income? Are you able to go in a different direction or opportunity? And if so, how long? What happens if your salary gets cut? Are you in a position to be in things for the long game, or do you need to be in protect mode? And as we talk about this today, I want you to think in terms of not just while we're going through this time of turbulence or disruption or uncharted waters or whatever, but also for the long haul. And when you think about making decisions for your future, all of this is especially true today, but it applies going on as well. I mentioned about driving into work in March and that overwhelming thought I had about something's going to change and I think this is going to be big. But all the time we're getting intruded upon by just different unknowns and intangibles in the world, so things from the outside that you can't predict. And this year has been just overwhelming with those different things that affect our life, our health, finances, social things we couldn't have even seen coming because they're hitting us in so many different ways and from so many different directions. And when that external stuff is so rampant, it's also thinking about the internal stuff and how you react to it, your willingness to pivot in the direction of the changes that are being thrown at you. You know, you're all familiar, I'm sure, with that adage about life being 10% what happens and 90% about what you do with it. A lot of times we get caught up in that 10%. What's happening to me? And that's why it's important to think about what you can, about what you can't control, and taking steps to manage what you can control and to mitigate what you can't control. And so even thinking in terms of, if there's something I can't control, what can I do about changing my response to it? What can I do to change other things around it that can give me more of a sense of being able to control some of those things that I have really no influence over? And then the final piece of this model is you, because you're at the center of this. You're the X factor. You're the most important component in this. And this may have changed somewhat based on some of the disruptions, but it's still very important because it's where all of those things intersect together. So welcome to a new world. Most people are going to be very different after the experiences they've gone through over the last few months. I was on a call this morning with an organization. We're doing some work with them in a couple weeks about aligning their strategy and their culture with the way their business has shifted. And one of the people said on the call said, "Is this the right time? People have been through so much. They were doing well as things were going on, as the adrenaline was pumping and as they were facing the day-to-day, but now they're getting that fatigue. They're starting to feel like, how can I, I just don't have the energy for yet another Zoom call. I don't have the energy for always constantly having to be rethinking the way I do things." Because our brains have undergone a lot of different shifts over the past couple months. Whether you want to call it something like post-traumatic stress disorder or what, your brains have really been rewired. Think about it. Your sleep patterns have been adjusted. You know, how many of you probably go to bed a lot later if you're working at home than you did when you were going into the office? You get used to that. You get used to being able to wear what you want to wear, work where you want to work, sometimes work when you want to work. So it's important to think about what's the same and the impact of how you perceive yourself. For example, in looking at yourself, there's that work at home Mollie and there's that work in the office Mollie, and how are they different? How have your perceptions of what's the same been impacted? Also thinking about what's not the same, what's different, recognizing that you have to change some habits and look at things differently. You may have to unlearn things, the ways of doing things, the processes, the way things that worked in the past that might not work the same today. And then finally thinking too in terms of what's new, what's different. Employees that you work with, what is their motivation? You may need different skills for yourself and for others to be able to be effective in the world today. The way we work and the way we work together is going to change regardless. So for example, using technology and video. The company I worked for before, when we would talk about doing things virtually, a lot of our clients would say, nope, we don't want to do that. People won't be engaged. They can't figure out the technology. It won't work. But things have shifted and now people are much more open to it. And so technology has, where it had used to been seen as something that disconnected people. If you email someone, if you do a video conference versus being in person, now it's become something that actually does connect people. So there's a lot of those kind of changes going on. So we think about how do we address this and what do we do about it? It's about moving from strategic thinking to future thinking. So it's building on some different things that you're probably doing already around strategic thinking. I'm going to show you a strategic thinking model and show you where this layers of future planning or future thinking need to fit into this. So for example, as you see in the picture I have here, that model I just shared you with your core 3 and those intruders, it's right in the center because you always have to have that right in front of you, thinking about where are my strengths, where are my values, what's my financial situation, and what's impacting me. Again, think in terms of your business that you may own or you might be a part of, and also think in terms of how you function or work within that. So it's about your work and it's about yourself, because this is going to fit into both of these. The first thing you do, and again, this is part of a standard strategic thinking kind of model, is exploring your perspectives. It's what's going on, not just in your industry, but what's going on in the world. You may have only looked in the past and thinking about what's going on in your immediate area, who are your local competitors, things like that. But now, because technology is such a bigger input into the way we do business, you may need to think more broadly. What's happening with technology? What's happening with your customers? What are your customers worried about? Who are your competitors? What are your competitors better at you at? And what are they not as good at you at? Who are the new consumers, both actual consumers and potential consumers? Meaning sometimes thinking about different generations and what are they wanting and what might impact your situation with regard to that. Making sure that you have expansive and relevant resources that can help you find the information that you need. The second thing is determining the significance of what you find. There's tons of data out there, but it's determining what really matters. What data points are really meaningful specifically for you? What's the story in the data? Strategic thinking is all about connecting the dots. It's about looking at all of those different pieces and saying which of these matter. The third piece then is, and again, this is part of a standard strategic thinking model. You probably use this quite a bit, but thinking about possibilities. What are your options? A lot of times we think in terms of the past. What have we done before? What's worked? What are other people doing? And what have they done? What's tried and true? But turbulent times require you oftentimes to make best guesses because you're dealing with a lot of ambiguity. It requires you to think how things may play out so that there are other steps you might need to take before you can even determine which options are right for you. So another layer that I'm adding to the strategic model is, before even envisioning possibilities, is thinking about where you're vulnerable. You can't predict all of the unforeseeable events, like what if there's a global pandemic and my business shuts down for 3 months? But instead of thinking in terms of where you don't have strength, you know, we said the core 3 is thinking where you do have strength, but you also have to think about where you don't have strength to deal with something that may be unpredictable. What could upend you or one of your core 3 elements? What if you can't operate your business for a long time? It could be, what else could happen? What does your personal depth chart look like? What if your clients hit financial difficulties, or your suppliers dry up, or your employer has challenges? What if there's no longer a market for your skills or your career? What will it look like 2, 5, 10 years from now? You can't predict everything that could happen. However, you can think about what can be impacted and what you might not be recoverable from. And then the final piece, which we'll talk about a bit going forward here, is considering how you respond to these what ifs. So it's about scenario planning, looking at these different vulnerabilities and considering different options for mitigating them, putting a plan in place to address them. So what do people need now in the new reality? And even better, what might they need tomorrow? And what can I do to address that? It's getting your best people in the room and talking about the potential likely and unlikely events and circumstances that could impact you or your organization. Now you might be thinking, well, Mollie, I don't have people. Well, yes, you do. Even if you don't own or run an organization or have a work team, you have people that know you, people that care about you, people that understand your business. You've got this group here that you can bounce ideas off of, and people who can give you different perspectives and keep you from being really myopic about the way you look at things. So what you'll do is you'll look at the internal and external forces that impact your business and your career, and thinking about the what ifs and then the if thens to strategize how you can respond quickly in a variety of different options. So before we dissect this a little bit more, I want to highlight one thing too, to say disruption isn't always a bad thing altogether. It can create great opportunities for new businesses, customers, product lines, efficiencies, streamlines, and ways of working. The other day, I went and got my driver's license renewed. I was dreading it. We got there 15 minutes early, but boy, they had that down to clockwork out on Mayfield Road. You know, they got all the information up front. You go in, you answer a few questions, sign a few things, take your picture, and you're out. It was actually an easier experience than I'd had in the past. So sometimes disruption can actually force people to say, what matters and how do we make this work? So how do you know what to keep and what to change and what to streamline if you don't know what the future looks like? It's hard to predict and be ready for anything. So let's look at what goes into scenario planning. First of all, scenario planning should be part of your regular ongoing business discussions, not just in these times of turbulence and disruption. It needs to be broad, it needs to be strategic, and it should give you enough perspective to allow you to identify and connect all those necessary dots that we've been talking about. It's bringing in new bits of information about the world and relating them to your context and your core three. You should schedule these regularly as part of your ongoing business discussions if you have a business or with your work team, or just even as a self-reflection within yourself to think strategically about what you want to do with your career or your personal self. It should focus on where you are now and what you want your future to look like, either for you or for your business again. Consider growth plans, your career goals, retirement plans. You may do SWOT analysis, which is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. But it also adds elements of future planning as well. You can work in terms instead of visioning. Where do I want to be a year from now? What will that look like? Who will I be interacting with? Who will my customers be? What kind of work will I be doing? What will I be paid? What will that look like? But actually putting in front of you what you want that future to look like and then building in the steps of how you get there. The third piece is bringing in more often unpredictable data. It requires you to ask more questions, ask different questions, and focus not just on the expected, but world events and drivers that could snowball and impact your piece of the world. You have to examine and validate your assumptions. For example, you may have assumed that your orders of business may go through as planned, that your customers would be loyal regardless of the circumstance, that you'll remain healthy, your vendor supply won't dry up, just that the brick and mortar stores will always be in place because you like brick and mortar stores, or that if you may only have issues with one part of your business versus all parts of your world collectively having issues at the same time. So it's examining what those assumptions are and coming to grips with what is real and what might not be. You also want to consider the likely and the unlikely. Focusing as much on the specifics of, not as much on the specifics of what could happen, but the impacts of something unpredictable happening. Consider what's in your circle of control. What can you do about that? Who do you need to help you? Who are your resources? And where do you not have resources? And where can you mitigate that issue? You probably gathered right now that scenario planning isn't really about having all the right answers, but it's more about asking the right questions. You want to be looking at customer data, industry data, competitor data, market information, your own organizational capacity, your own individual capacity. And when you consider your skills and capabilities, it's about thinking about who can benefit from what I have to give. Who's willing to pay for that in this new world order? It's not always about making the stuff you did or working in the way you did, but thinking about the capabilities and the capacity that you really have. So we talked about in that strategic thinking model about discerning significance. but just about the importance, what's important, how meaningful and relevant is the information you have. You don't want to react full force to something if it doesn't have significance or impact in your world. I keep telling you to collect a lot of data, and that's important. But what you shouldn't and can't possibly do is react to every point. So it's important to think about what could be a blip. You know, it's just a random data point, it's an aberration, it doesn't really mean something in the long term. A fad, which is something that people take up with enthusiasm, but again, really doesn't have staying power. A trend, which is a direction that things are going. You really want to pay more attention to trends. Some are short term, but a lot of times it's taking things into a new direction. Or a cycle, which is things that happen on a regular, maybe even a seasonal type of basis. Then you want to put together your scenarios. You'll probably have some different scenarios for different situations, and they should be put together in a coherent, focused, testable kind of map. It should take you from your current state where you are now to your desired state, which is where you want to go. It should take into account your strengths, your values, what's important to you, so your core three. It shouldn't be too reactive. So again, you don't want to focus on those blips and fads, but you really want to focus on the trends and the cycles that are probably going to be more longer term. You want to think about who you need to involve in this, who you want to validate it with, who can look at it and ask you questions that can help you consider what's going to help you and your business be sustainable in the long term. So I want to show you a map of what a future planning scenario might look like. You might have done things like this for your business in the past, but I've added some different things to make it specifically relevant to the future planning that we've been talking about. On the left, you have where you are today. And it could be the strengths, it could be the things that you want to change, or it could be the things that you want to keep the same. But it's identifying what do we know about today. On the right, you have where is it that we want to be tomorrow? What goals do I have for my business? What goals do I have for my career? How do I want to see myself operating in the world? I told you about thinking about visioning. What would it look like a year from now if I was doing exactly what I want to do? If my business was operating the way I wanted to operate, and put that on paper on the tomorrow section. The bottom of the page is your specific core three. They're the foundation of everything. You want to have that as the basis of things. And I'm giving you this map, or I'm telling you or suggesting you use this map, because what you put in writing, what you put in front of you, what you keep in front of you is something that you're much more likely to do if you have it in front of you. So on the top is that information you gather, those assumptions, those drivers, and then in the middle are the streams of activity. What are the steps you're going to take that take you from yesterday and to tomorrow? I'm sorry, today until tomorrow. And one could be the skills you need to develop. One could be relationships that you want to build, how you want to make sure that you're ensuring your financial stability and sustainability. There could be more than 3 streams certainly, and there could be more than 3 steps certainly in each of these. But it's putting on paper the steps that you are going to take, that you're committing to yourself to take you from A to B. And I'm quickly going to go through some skills that I think are really important, regardless of whether it's your business or your personal self, that can help you deal with change and ready for the future, which could be as soon as next week. So these are some critical competencies that are really important for you and your business in this new world order. First one, agility. It's being ready for anything. It's being ready and willing to turn on a dime. Speed is everything right now. And being able to look at what's going on and being willing to adapt, to change your habits, to try new things, and to understand that you can try something and recover and move on to something else. There's something called an infinite mindset. I don't know if you're familiar with someone called Simon Sinek. He's a consultant. He's got a lot of TED Talks and YouTube videos. And if you aren't familiar with him, I suggest you look him up, Simon Sinek. What he talks about, he talks a lot about your personal why and what's important to you. But when he talks about the infinite mindset, what he's saying is there's been a really big shift in the way people approach innovation that's based on game theory. So when I was younger, for example, you played a game, whether it was baseball or Monopoly or whatever. There's a winner, there's a loser. There's 9 innings, and at the end, we count up the runs, we see who won. We count up the money, we see, you know, who collects the most tokens, and they're the winner. Game theory is about there's always a new scenario, there's always new characters, there's always new matchups. And that's the way younger people and people who game are trained to think about things. It's getting that flexibility to be thinking in terms of your business, of your career, of the way you work on things. Oh, thank you. Someone put Simon Sinek. Thank you, Yolanda. To be thinking in terms of different ways of approaching things and being ready for what's next. Curiosity. If I could never stop talking about curiosity. I just think it's that important. It's asking questions. What if? Why? Why not? What else? Who else could we involve? What if what we believed really isn't true? How can you learn more about your customers and what they need? What are other people doing? We talked a little bit about stakeholders. Find out what are your customers dealing with. Ask them questions about problems they're trying to solve and see if there's a way that you can partner with them to solve it. When thinking about your career, what problems are going on in the world and what kind of solutions might it need that could align with the types of skills that you have. And when I say world, I don't necessarily just mean the globe, but in your world. Connections are very important in many ways. Connecting with people. I said get more techie, but it's also important to get more personal. Really understanding those customer connections where everyone today is feeling so isolated and feeling individualized and kind of caught up in their own stuff, where you can make connections with people and find partnerships. Within this group, when I was hearing people introduce themselves, all the different types of skill sets that people in this group bring together, is there a way to join some of those forces to find opportunity where you can find, whether it's for your business or your own personal development, ways that you can connect and do things together and find partnerships to strengthen your own position. Very important. Fail fast, learn fast. Speed is important, as I said. Trying things out. If they don't work, being willing to cut bait and try something else. Always being looking for different ways of learning. The people with all the books in the background, share your books with each other. There's so many things that you can also learn online. Make sure that you're finding different opportunities to learn and learn from your mistakes. You don't really learn a lot from success. I'll be honest with you. In my career, I've had a lot of successes. I've had a lot of failures. I can tell you a lot more about what I learned from my failures and the things that didn't go well than I can from things that did go well. Know your metrics. Know what you're measuring against. What does success look like for you, for your business, and measure against it. If you have a work team, you probably realized over the last few months who are your producers and who are not your producers. Make decisions when it isn't life or death the same way you would when it is. So thinking about outputs and what people are doing. Are they demonstrating the behaviors you want to see? Are they demonstrating the performance you want to see? Are they getting the outputs that you want to see? Resilience. This is one of the most important. It's about ensuring that you are change ready, you're driving, you're focused on your goals and where it is you want to be, whether it's your business or your career plan. And it puts your best people, meaning you, focused on creating a rock solid future. And so it means taking care of yourself, drinking those special smoothies that can help rejuvenate you and help you bring your best self to your table. It also means having patience. I keep talking about speed and moving quickly, but it's also having patience because we don't know what's going to happen. In times of turbulence, it's understanding that you might have to ride things out for a while and not giving up. And then finally, having confidence. And this goes with optimism. So believing in yourself that your decisions will work out, giving yourself the benefit of the doubt, having a guidepost for yourself and for others to say, this is where we're going to where we're going to go, and I think it'll work. Even if you don't truly believe in it, it's sometimes still acting as though you believe in it, because if you don't demonstrate that confidence in yourself and in your plan, others aren't going to necessarily follow it as well. It also helps other people have confidence to realize, if you can do it, I can do it too. So regardless of if you own or operate your own business, or you're part of a bigger enterprise, or something in between, it all begins and ends with you. I know I was talking very quickly, so I'm going to move to our last slide, which is just questions or comments regarding what we talked about today, and see if there is anything that I can answer for you.